Welcome to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Today we'll be talking to a number of individuals about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders just like you. Let's begin with what's making headlines today on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page. Our top story comes from Kim Kozlowski at the Detroit News. Students and faculty alike are up in arms at Michigan State University as the school plans to unveil the portrait of former President Luanna K. Simon today in a special private ceremony at the Breslin Student Event Center. Simon, the first woman to ever serve as president of the university, served from 2005 to 2018 in that position when scandals surrounding the university athletics doctor as well as sexual predator Larry Nassar led to her eventual retirement. As part of her agreement with Michigan State to retire in 2018, Luanna K. Simon was awarded a presidential portrait as well as the titles of President Emeritus and Faculty Emeritus alongside a hefty $2.45 million payoff. Said Joe Kovac, the president of the Associated Students of MSU or ASMSU, the student in quoting Nassar survivor Grace French, quote, "The fact that Luanna K. Simon was allowed to retire with dignity is unacceptable," and closed quote. In response to the outcry of dismay surrounding the former university president's portrait, current Board of Trustees chairperson Diane Byram said, quote, "Luanna Simon's history at Michigan State is complicated. There are different lenses by which you can view her time here. I want to acknowledge that it is customary for the university to have a portrait painted of a previous president, but you don't see a woman's portrait. Luanna Simon was the first woman president at Michigan State. She was here for 14 years. You have to take the bad times with the good times and understanding it will be viewed through a different lens for different people," and closed quote. Simon faced charges in the Nassar scandal in 2018, charged with lying to the police regarding the extent of her knowledge of allegations against Larry Nassar. She was cleared of all those charges in 2020. Also making headlines today on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page from Tracy Mariello at Bridge, Michigan, in partnership with Chalkbeat Detroit. Foster kids throughout the state are urging lawmakers to help them graduate by removing barriers to crediting them for their education while in foster homes. Of the over 10,000 kids in foster care in the state of Michigan, just about 40% graduate high school in 4 years. That average statewide doubles for kids outside of the foster system to 80%. One of the main culprits, the accreditation of educational service in the foster homes themselves, where kids are often required to be schooled due to placement with other kids and among kids that have mental health, addiction, juvenile delinquency, or other past issues. These require them to remain in these homes at all times and not leave even for school. The problem is the education they receive in these homes are largely not accredited by the state of Michigan, and so their class time essentially does not count. Said attorney Judith New of the Michigan Children's Law Center, quote, "These kids could be spending years of time in residential placement and then coming back to a regular school and having the school say, you have no transferable credits at all. You have to start over in 9th grade," and closed quote. In a direct quote from Moriello's article, quote, "Current law requires residential facilities to provide education services, but does not require that the programs be accredited. The results can be dramatic. With kids dropping out of school, living at greater rates of poverty, not qualifying for work due to their lack of education, which also contributes and exacerbates to the poverty issue, and more." All this is much further elaborated on, goes into additional detail, connects to a number of other issues that face foster kids in the state of Michigan, including those who time out of the foster system or age out of the foster system. Read this article from Tracy Moriello by clicking through to it on our website, CivicCenterTV.com. On our local news page, click local news at the top of our homepage or on the drop-down menu on the left margin on your mobile devices for more. Finally, we conclude today with some good news making headlines on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page from Nora Rahal at the Detroit Free Press. "Detroit does it best," says USA Today on the annual America's Thanksgiving Day Parade, voted by USA Today as their 2022 best holiday parade in America. This is the third time in the past 5 years that the D has taken home this honor. Said Tony Michaels, president and CEO of the parade company, quote, "The parade itself is the heart and soul of our city. It's viewed by 1 million people live on Woodward Avenue, and the television audience is massive. This is a 96-year tradition, a beloved tradition that means so much to so many people, kids, families, and that's why this means so much," end closed quote. In addition to the parade, other local honors included Meadowbrook Hall in Rochester Hills, earning third place in America for the best historic holiday home tour, which remains ongoing now through December 30th. There is a link in this article to purchase tickets and experience this yourself. More of that and the link itself is in this article on our website, civiccentertv.com, on our local news page, along with links to COVID-19 updates from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division at the top of the page. We have a great show ahead on this Monday edition of the Megacast. Coming up next, how to protect yourselves, your loved ones, and other visitors from holiday hazards in the home this holiday season, and protect them over the cold months as you manage your home, your vehicle, and more. That's coming up next on the Megacast.
Watch Civic Center TV with our brand new live captions. To turn on live captions, go to civiccentertv.com and click Watch Live. In your web browser, click on the Options tab in the top right and find the Accessibilities tab. Then just switch on live captions to heighten your enjoyment of our local programming. Thank you so much for watching Civic Center TV.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Wake up, Greater West Bloomfield. Start your mornings with The Splash and tune in for The Splash Live. Get acquainted with people, places, and activities that are live, local, and for you. First thing in the morning, weekdays at 9:30 a.m. on our Civic Center TV YouTube page, or watch us live at Civic Center TV or on Facebook. The Splash Live, Greater West Bloomfield's live update show.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find links to all of our partnering stations in Oakland County and across the state, including our co-flagship, My Michigan TV, and find our full shows and each individual interview on demand in case you're not able to join us 5 days a week from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. for our live show or live to tape on other parts of our network, such as Orion Neighborhood Television and Birmingham Area Municipal Access. You can always find us online on your time at civiccentertv.com/megacast. Well, this holiday season, as you invite other people into your home and keep your home warm, your vehicle warmed up and ready for the day, and de-icing your driveway, all the things you do during the winter season, especially during the holiday season as people are visiting your home or you're visiting someone else's home, that presents a number of different hazards that can be a danger to yourself, to your kids, to your pets, and more. Here to talk about some of those issues and ways you can avoid them as well as mitigate them is Dr. Varun Vohra from the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center. Dr. Vohra, thanks for being with us again.
Hey, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you with us. So, and there's obviously throughout the year, there are some consistent hazards that people find in their homes, whether it be certain chemicals or cleaners laying around that could be hazardous to anybody if ingested, or even if they make contact with your skin, among other issues. But what are some of the more common hazards that tend to pop up around the holiday season that people should be keeping an eye out for and keeping aware of in their homes?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, there's kind of two sections, right? Sort of outdoor and indoor hazards common around this time of year. So as far as indoor goes, there's going to be a lot of family time, a lot of friends, a lot of get-togethers. So I think food handling is going to be a big one, sort of a low-hanging fruit there. So people want to make sure that they're separating their cooked and their raw foods, their meats, their poultries, separate from things like fruits and vegetables. When it comes to cooking meat, things like keeping an internal a thermometer, a meat thermometer, will be really, really helpful. And then keeping your perishable foods within the refrigerator, usually at around 40 Fahrenheit, and making sure that you're refrigerating foods that are perishable that have been served within a couple of hours. And all this kind of information with regards to minimum temperatures with food handling and cooking and preparation, you can find on our website at mipoisonhelp.org. Further, plants are a big thing, decorative plants within this time of year in the home. So things like holly, poinsettias, pine, mistletoe as well. So you want to keep these out of the reach of children at least, and make sure that you're monitoring them when they're around these kinds of things, because handling them, swallowing them, etc., can cause severe reactions, potentially skin reactions, allergic reactions. They can be very irritating to the mouth area and the stomach. And can cause some pretty significant injuries. So we want to keep kids and pets away from those, especially. When handling live pine as well, want to make sure that you're covering your skin. And as well, cleaning up pine needles that may have fallen, so because kids and pets can get into them. Toys is a big thing as well, with all the gifts that kids are going to be receiving. Bubble lights, things like that. You want to make sure that they are, obviously you're keeping kids away from them in terms of potentially ingesting them. They contain a very hazardous material. It's called methylene chloride. It's a hydrocarbon. If swallowed, it can actually turn into carbon monoxide. So it can cause a whole host of badness. Other toys, lights, bells, toys, etc., they can be choking hazards as well. So just making sure that you're watching your kids during that time, making sure that they're using them appropriately for the right reasons, especially with batteries too. So a lot of these electronics that we're getting with toys, especially button batteries, alkaline batteries, are going to be hazardous. Button batteries are really tiny. They almost look like coins. If swallowed, it can be really hazardous, especially for children, because it doesn't take a lot to close that electric circuit. It can cause actually heat injuries or thermal injuries, because it can generate heat, which can be really, really damaging to the airway and the esophagus. Alkaline batteries, you can find them in toys and electronics as well, making sure that they aren't leaking or damaged, because they do contain corrosive liquids. Beyond that, sort of outside the home, things in the garage are going to be really, really salient, like you mentioned with the de-icing or ice melt products. So rock salt is a big one. So those things that kind of lower the freezing point of water, they kind of turn ice into slush, right? And they increase the traction so it's not as slippery. The problem with those is that they contain a lot of sodium chloride usually, or other types of chlorides, which can be really, really hazardous if ingested. It can cause a whole host of electrolyte imbalances, which can be really, really dangerous. So you want to keep kids and pets away from that, especially. As well as in the garage, antifreeze and windshield washer fluids. We see a lot of these types of ingestions and injuries, calls to the poison center, or patients that we see in the hospital. They can be very toxic. They contain products called ethylene glycol and methanol. Very, very toxic. Can cause, kidney damage. It can cause blindness as well. Making sure that they're up and away out of the reach of children. They can be colorful liquids. So you want to make sure that they're kept either in a locked cabinet or their original containers up and away. Sometimes what we see is that these products are kept in other types of containers, which people might mistake for, potable fluids, things like water bottles, etc. So please do not do that. But again, if there's any sort of question or concerns that someone or a kid may have gotten into it, call the poison center immediately. The biggest thing that we do recommend is if and when these children or anyone gets into these types of products, do not make them vomit at all. Call us first if you can. If it's an emergency where someone's lost consciousness or seizing or having trouble breathing, call 911 right away. That's going to be the biggest thing for adults and caregivers.
24/7 free expert poison help can be available in a couple different places on the website, the Michigan, on the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center's website. That is poison.med.wayne.edu, as well as by calling them 1-800-222-1222. That's 1-800-222-1222 for more information. And going to more of those outdoor products that we use in the winter season, those de-icers and such, are there alternatives that are suggested by your organization or by other experts in this particular area that may be less of a hazard, maybe a more natural product that's less potentially dangerous, but just as effective, that people may be able to replace some of these more chemically charged products in their home with?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the outdoor products, things like antifreeze, there's different types. There's environmentally friendly antifreeze. It usually has things like propylene glycol. They're more environmentally friendly to pets, but they still can be toxic. Unfortunately, it's kind of a trade-off, right? Because for it to be able to function like it needs to, it has to have certain chemical properties a lot of times. So with the de-icers and rock salt, a lot of times those things are the most effective at lowering that freezing point of water to kind of get rid of that ice and turn it into that slush. So it is, again, sort of a trade-off. I know that we can't avoid people getting into these types of things, but there are a few alternatives. But again, these are usually tried and true products. We just want to make sure that we're monitoring our children and our pets and making sure that they're not getting into these things inappropriately. And whenever you do use them, making sure things that are quite intuitive to individuals, making sure that kids may not be around when you're actually using them so that they don't see it, or especially keeping the products up and away out of the reach of them so they can't access it. Another thing I did want to mention, though, big time of year, especially in the winter time, is smoke and carbon monoxide. I think that's a big indoor hazard that people always need to be vigilant about, and making sure that they do have carbon monoxide detectors installed on all floors of their home, smoke alarms as well, making sure that they're getting them checked very regularly, at least once yearly, making sure that they're getting their furnace checked as well, at least once yearly, and making sure to recognize that carbon monoxide is colorless, it's odorless, so you won't be able to smell it, you won't be able to see it, but a lot of the signs and symptoms can be really, really damaging. So you're going to have headaches, you could have nausea, vomiting, you could even lose consciousness depending on the concentrations of carbon monoxide. So that's why we recommend people never running gas generators or charcoal grills or gas grills inside the home or any sort of enclosed space or 20 feet from the home. Making sure that the space is ventilated, because it can obviously lead to badness where people can potentially lose consciousness. A lot of grilling happens this time of year for a variety of reasons, for football games, etc. So making sure that they're taking the necessary precautions to ventilate that space. So that's a big hazard that we're always on the lookout for, and that we want people to know more about.
We're joined by Dr. Varun Vohra on today's edition of the Megacast. He's the academic director as well as a clinical toxicologist at the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center with us on today's program. Again, the phone number for the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center, should you be in need of 24/7 free expert poison help, is 1-800-222-1222, 1-800-222-1222, or local calls in Michigan only at 313-486-0078. 313-486-0078 is recommended. You dial with a 1 in front of the 313 as well. Another thing we see commonly this year too, and you mentioned it a little bit when you talked about smoke and carbon monoxide, is people want to avoid the cold and be ready to use their vehicles or other devices that are typically outdoors, their cars, maybe a snow blower, and in many cases they want to warm these up, but there are a number of hazards that come along with those, even if your garage door is open. So what are the suggestions from the Poison and Drug Information Center in terms of what people can do to warm these different vehicles up without potentially leading to a hazard in their garage or other areas of their home?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing there, especially with cars, never run your car or to heat it up while you're waiting to get in before work or whatnot. Never run it in the enclosed garage. I think ventilation is going to be the biggest similarity between all these sort of practices is making sure that you have a space, a big enough space for that gas to dissipate. It has somewhere to go, so it's not obviously enclosed in that space, and it's going to cause more harm. Snowblower, same thing. If you're running it, making sure that it's near the end of the garage where it's making off gas into the outside. So those are the biggest things that we preach around this time of year. And I think the biggest thing is that if you do start to have any symptoms, we're hoping that you have a functional carbon monoxide detector. But if there's any doubt, remove yourself from the home, open windows, etc., and making sure to inquire with other people in the home whether they have any symptoms or they're experiencing similar effects. If you have any questions, again, please call the Poison Center. And if it's serious enough, where someone's lost consciousness or having trouble breathing, etc., call 911 immediately.
More information, again, can be found, as well as other helpful tips, on poison.med.wayne.edu, or if you have additional needs for 24/7 free expert poison help, 1-800-222-1222 is the phone number for more information. Joining us is Dr. Varun Vohra, the academic director, as well as a clinical toxicologist at the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center, on today's edition of the Megacast. Dr. Vohra, a couple more minutes with you today before we'll need to move on. Anything else that people should be aware of this holiday season, this winter season, or going forward that are becoming more common hazards in the home, or just things to look out for and be careful of?
Yeah, I think around this time of year, again, like I said, with people getting together, with parties, family get-togethers, friends, etc., there's going to be a lot of different types of foods and drinks. So when it comes to alcohol use, we want everyone to obviously be responsible with their alcohol use this time of year. So typically, we recommend, when it comes to men and women, with men, usually 2 standard alcoholic beverages a day, and with women, it's usually no more than 1. And standard alcoholic drink can be different things. So a 12-ounce beer contains about 5% alcohol. A 5-ounce glass of wine can contain more percentage of alcohol, about 12%. And then about a 1.5 ounce of a shot of liquor, so sort of hard liquor. Usually it's 80 proof, which is usually about 40% alcohol. Typically, that's what we would recommend, no more than 2 in men and no more than 1 in women. Obviously, keeping these stuff out of the reach of children is going to be the biggest thing. Children can be more sensitive. It doesn't take as much for them to ingest to cause toxicity, just because of their sheer size, especially, and it can cause a lot of electrolyte imbalances as well in children that they can be susceptible to. So we want to make sure that everyone's enjoying themselves, but enjoying themselves responsibly. So making sure that's always sort of a universal hazard that's out there with alcoholic beverages, but sometimes in some seasons more than others. So making sure that we're being vigilant and careful when we use these products, especially around children.
More information, again, can be found on the website, on the Poison Center's website, poison.med.wayne.edu. Dr. Vohra, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tyler. Take care.
You as well. Appreciate having you on. Again, for 24/7 free poison help from experts at the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center, you can call them 1-800-222-1222, 1-800-222-1222. We'll take a break on the Megacast. On the other side, the speed painting sensation himself, Dan Dunn, who you've seen all across the country, including here in our local area, will join us to talk about PaintJam. Coming up next, you're watching and listening to the Megacast.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan, streaming everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Wondering what to say to someone who's been sexually assaulted or abused?
I believe you. I'm sorry this happened.
It's not your fault.
Confidential and anonymous help is available at the Michigan Sexual Assault Hotline. Connect with us 24/7. Call 855-VOICES-4 or text 1-866-238-1454 for help. Learn more at michigan.gov/voices4.
What's happening around you? Hear about state events, businesses, and from the people behind them on the Megacast, an hour-long TV, radio, and streaming show keeping you informed on the day-to-day news. Listen in on talks with volunteer groups, documentarians, and financial advisors, Monday to Friday with your host, Tyler Kieft. Catch the Megacast weekdays from 10 a.m. to 11 on Civic Center TV, 89.3 Lakes FM, and streaming on mymytv.com.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can learn more about our program on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find links to each and every one of our partnering stations across the state of Michigan and find our full shows and each individual interview on demand. civiccentertv.com/megacast. Well, there's plenty of different ways that you can enjoy art in our community and all across the country. And some of the ways you can do that is through paint and through making a little bit of a mess, but an organized mess that comes out looking very beautiful. And one of the people that's the best at doing that is Dan Dunn, speed painter with PaintJam, joining us now on the Megacast. Dan, appreciate having you on today.
Morning, Tyler. I'm Cindy Dunn, Dan Dunn's wife, and we're in the Oakland Mall at the intersection of 14 Mile and 75. I think Dan is rehearsing something for you right now.
Oh, okay. So as you know, locally, they're at the Oakland Mall doing some reorganization, getting some things back in order. And one of the things they're bringing in there is, of course, as we see Dan Dunn and PaintJam, his wife Cindy, with us as we walk up and see Dan at work over here, speed painting a portrait. It looks like Santa Claus is the topic of interest there. Look at this. Just really, for those that are listening on the radio, you're going to want to see this, civiccentertv.com/megacast, as Dan is just rapidly putting Santa's iconic beard together, that white hair as well, and this portrait at the Oakland Mall, one of the places you can see PaintJam. You can also find them on their website, paintjam.com, and across social media. Dan, are you with us? Here's might be having some connection issues with them, but again, while we work with them on that, getting them all connected, as they're moving around, there's a lot going on there. It's PaintJam. It's always some action. They're moving around with speed. They're painting portraits. You can view all this and see some examples of Dan's work that you'll see at the Oakland Mall, as well as you've seen across the country by visiting his website, paintjam.com. Dan, Cindy, are you with us?
We are. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
You know what? We might have to move out towards the front of the mall, guys.
Might have to happen, but it's okay. We got a good visual. There we are. We have you now, Dan. Dan, thanks. Appreciate having you on, Dan.
We forgot to put it in airplane mode, so it went to sleep. Sorry.
That's okay. Happens. Technology is always going to be a factor when we're doing shows via Zoom. So Dan, tell us about PaintJam. We see a little bit of your work in the background. Hard at work over there at the Oakland Mall. How did this all get started for you?
It all got started here at Oakland Mall. Mario Kesey is the mall owner, wanted to do something, to promote the arts in the community. And he wants to do more things for the arts in the mall and everything. So he's got this vision to do this. So he brought me in as an international painter to perform here for Christmas. And we said, sure. So here we are from Houston, Texas. We're performing 2 shows a day, and people love it.
This is amazing too. We saw a little bit of your work earlier as you're working on that portrait behind you there of Santa Claus. And it's interesting because painting is so intricate and you can get such great detail out of it. But often when we think of painters, we think of people taking a lot of time to get those intricacies absolutely perfect and going over every little minutia of thing. And you're able to do that with a whole lot of speed and a whole lot of motion. It's really not just a form of art in painting, but a performance art as well. So how did that skill develop for you? Because I'd imagine that is quite the tough task to complete.
Well, I was always I was always theatrical. I played the band for 10 years, and I also was a caricature artist for 30 years. So I was used to drawing in front of people and performing and entertaining. Also did a little stand-up comedy. So I'm good at entertaining and being in front. So yeah, this is more, Paint Jam is almost like a juggling act with paint because everything's choreographed and I try to get the painting to finish exactly at the right time, get the handprint on the last note. Just everything is a performance and rehearsed and choreographed. Did you ask me how it got started? How Paint Jam got started?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a painter named Denny Dent. He was very famous out of Denver. And in 1981, he started his career. And I saw him on Letterman in 1989. And I flipped out. And I just thought, man, this guy's created a new kind of art. In 2004, Denny passed away. And I was playing with the idea of starting my own speed painting show. So I felt like, well, I guess Houdini's gone. Maybe I could be David Copperfield. And I started rehearsing, and my daughter put it on video. I was in a stage show. I started rehearsing, building a website, telling everybody, just living the dream, just working it. And my daughter put it on her site. I was in a stage show, and I painted Ray Charles and Lady Liberty in Atlantic City for 3 weeks. And with all this other talent, I was like, it was new to me being in show business. But she put this video from that up on YouTube, and it went viral. And so I made my own site, and because I said, oh no, it's on Rat Gel's site. Her name is Rachel, so she said Rat Gel. I made my own site, and it had like 100 views, in a month. And people were saying, no, you've had 10,000 views. It was all on her site because she'd been working the social media. And we were the 45th most viewed video on YouTube at one point with the painting of Ray Charles. And that got us on Fallon, Ellen, Super Bowl pregame show, Rachel Ray, Nat Geo channel, Japanese TV, Turkish TV, all over the world. And just all over the world. The first year, I think we did 100 cities, 11 countries. And now my son does it. I've trained him. And so he goes out sometimes, and I go out sometimes. Sometimes we go out together and work together as Dunn and son. And we're just glad to be back on stage after being locked up for 2 years.
Dan Dunn is with us on the Megacast. You can find him now at the Oakland Mall in Troy and find all of his information and book him yourself for an event coming up at paintjam.com. You've seen him all over the place. Super Bowl 44, the pregame show, late night with Jimmy Fallon on National Geographic as well, and many other places. You can find more videos of his performances and his art at paintjam.com. That's paintjam.com. So Dan, both you and your wife Cindy, who we had with us a little bit earlier, mentioned you're at the Oakland Mall. Where in the Oakland Mall can people visit you and see some of your work in motion at this time?
We're right in the front door right by the food court. We're back where the Spirit store was for Halloween. And the mall owner's just letting us use the space. We made a little theater. Show them the theater, Cindy. Spin it around there. It's a pop-up theater here.
Wow.
That's good.
And all those paintings you did through this method, through your speed painting method, just like we saw earlier as you were getting to work on Santa Claus behind you, all this the same exact method, and they turned out that way.
Yeah, well, some of them have different surprises. We feel like the essence of entertainment is surprise. And so we try to hide things, and people think they see one thing, and then when we flip it, it's another. And we try to work as much of that magic, into it. We just want people to have fun. We want people to be inspired. We have a little audience participation bit, and I'm just happy to do that because if one child picks up art and starts getting interested in the arts and the creativity, it's worth it for me. I just love to inspire people and love to see artists emerging. And that's what Mario's trying to do here is he's trying to kickstart other artists in the mall and other things happening here other than just retail shopping. That's the key of it. But he wants to make the mall a destination. And he's a great guy, Mario. He's amazing.
You don't have to be an art enthusiast to love the work that's going on with PaintJam and to enjoy a good show. Like you were saying earlier, this really is a combination of painting and performance all into one. And Dan, you mentioned, your appreciation for seeing those smiling faces, so that inspiration in the next generation of people that may get into art themselves and into creative works and performance themselves. But for you, over the course of the years beyond that, what are some of the other elements of doing PaintJam and doing the speed painting that have been the most fun or the most fulfilling for you?
We've done so much. I mean, we've raised millions of dollars for charity for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Broward County. We've been doing their gala for 10 years, and the paintings sell for ridiculously high prices because it's a well-heeled crowd. It all goes for charity. And so we're real happy that we've been able to do that. But I mean, I've had just amazing shows all over the world. I've had, you tend to remember when things go wrong, but a whole lot has gone right. And a lot of it was just giving myself permission, to do it, to follow the dream. And thank goodness, Cindy, when she introduced me, she's been part of the team since the beginning. We run the company together. Now our son goes with us, and the three of us do things, and it's really been we're a family circus.
More information can be found on their website, paintjam.com. You can also contact them by phone, 416-931-3643, 416-931-3643, or send them an email, info@paintjam.com. Highly encourage you to go down to the Oakland Mall and see this in person, in action. You can also see plenty of videos on the website of Dan and his past work at paintjam.com. And this is taking you to a number of memorable places. We mentioned earlier, Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, back when he was doing the late night show before he did the Tonight Show as he does now, Super Bowl 44. What are some of the other memorable places that PaintJam has taken you, Dan?
Oh, well, we've just been all over. I mean, 29 countries. But I mean, I could brag about, Madison Square Garden or, the Venetian, but really just some of the most memorable places are some of the smaller things. We do the big things, the smaller things. And my favorite part of the show is always visiting with people after the show and kind of finding out about their lives. And that's interesting to me. So that's always, I'm covered with paint. I would say free hugs. Sometimes I get a taker. Sir Richard Branson said, no, it's my first ever suit, which I didn't believe. But there have been so many memorable things. I work a lot of corporate events. So that's how I meet all the celebrities and things, and charity galas. And they're there, and usually I'm opening for them. They don't open for me. I open for them. What's that? Oh, halftime. Yeah, we also do a lot of halftime shows. We do, a lot. We've done NFL, NBA, PGA. We're not, just everybody. We've been all over. Hockey, race cars. Yeah, we've done Formula One races, and done the Le Mans in France. That was a fun gig. Yeah.
All these different places he's been and now in your local area here at the Oakland Mall in Troy on 14 Mile Road. You can find more information on PaintJam by visiting their website at paintjam.com. We're joined by Dan Dunn from PaintJam today, as well as his wife, Cindy. Dan, before we let you go, anything else we haven't talked about today that you'd like us to know about PaintJam at the Oakland Mall, or any other details?
Just come on out. It's a kid-friendly show. It's not too long. It's a couple of paintings and an audience participation thing, about 20 minutes. And we do it twice a day at 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock. So, and then that's it. And we'll be here Tuesday through Friday. We've been here since the 5th. And so we'll bug out and go home for a day, and then off to West Coast for a New Year's Eve party in Western Washington. So
get in there while you still can. 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock. You said, Dan, correct? Tuesday through Friday at the Oakland Mall. Yes, while you still can, at the Oakland Mall, 14 Mile Road in Troy. Dan, Cindy, thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's so nice visiting with you.
Yeah, good to have you on with us and appreciate you joining us to tell us more about this really fun event and performance you've got going on for a limited time at the Oakland Mall. We'll stick around right here on the Megacast, and we got one more group of individuals joining us on today's edition of the program. We'll keep it in the art space and go from the Oakland Mall to the Arab American Museum with Dalia El Sayed and Andrew Demirjan, two artists who are painting a picture of the future in the future city at the Arab American Museum. Thank you both for being with us today. Appreciate having you on.
Hey, Tyler. Good morning.
Good morning to you both as well. First off, I just want to get some background information. Tell us about Souvenirs for the Future. What is this particular thing that you two have been working on? Let's start with you, Dalia.
Okay, great. So the installation, it's an installation at the Arab American Museum in Dearborn, and it's kind of like a mini museum within the museum. We wanted to acknowledge what the Arab American Museum does through presenting stories of communities. And we did that, but for a future community and a future culture.
So it's like it's a museum that's looking back at a past that hasn't happened yet. Yeah. And we're learning about this kind of future city through this wall text.
So as you both are approaching this and you're designing this sort of, as you said, installation within the museum, this museum within a museum, how did you approach that to send these messages and that you were trying to send and convey what you're trying to convey to those that are viewing, both those that are in the Arab American community and those that are at the museum to learn more about the rich history of Arab Americans in our local area and of course all across the world?
Yeah, I mean, part of what we did was a lot of research in actual SWANA, Southwest Asia, and North African regions, and looked at museums and looked at how you can tell stories through objects. And then as we went through the museum's own archive, which is really rich and full of amazing objects that tell the stories of Arab Americans and their journeys, we thought it would be really interesting to take those categories and take the premises and genres of objects and think about them for the future. And think about what kind of future could we all envision for ourselves through the examining of objects. And then I think that's we really wanted people to think about how do we approach objects as storytellers, and how are these items actually really rich examples of larger phenomenon in cultures and cities.
Right.
And so as you approach this, Andrew, what were some of the items that you put on display to sort of convey that message that Dalia was talking about?
Yeah, we thought about like what's the kind of future that we want to see, and what are the kinds of things that we love that we want to take with us. And oftentimes it was very tactile, really kind of fun things that were kind of joyful in a way. So we made a series of rugs and clothes and slippers and
bowls and ceramics and
games. And so we were kind of world building through the language describing these, but also through these kind of tactile objects that were set in the future museum.
Right. And then the objects themselves sort of signal to what was valued and what was important to this culture in the future.
And there's also a really interesting sound component to the exhibit too. Can you speak on that, Dalia?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So Andrew is primarily responsible for the sound component, but I'll describe what it looks like. So it's this hanging speaker that is all tricked out with like these gold megaphone speakers on all sides and this tassel fringe and this highly visible, beautiful pattern. We wanted the aesthetics of the region to come through the objects. And then Andrew did an original composition for the speaker object.
Right. In our future city, Mustaqbalpolis, that stereo has been just kind of done away with. No one wants to listen to just stereo. This tyranny of these two speakers in this sound lamp that we've created, there's four horns that are coming out in all different directions. So you listen to sound, we listen to music in 360 degrees, and it kind of takes advantage of that. And so there's 5 speakers moving the sound around within this museum, and the music itself was kind of inspired by the orchestration that Kalthum, a famous Egyptian vocalist, would use in the 40s, and she'd have these traditional Egyptian instruments and North African, Southwest Asian instruments, but also include Western string sections and things like that. And so it's a deconstruction of these instruments, but stretched out and creating this kind of timelessness, a feeling of like extended time, which is one of the key aspects of the world we wanted to build.
We're joined by two of the artists responsible for Souvenirs for the Future, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. More information can be found on this exhibit and how you can enjoy it by going to the Arab American Museum's website, arabamericanmuseum.org. arabamericanmuseum.org is the website if you want to go straight to that page, arabamericanmuseum.org/souvenirs-from-the-future for more information, or just search Souvenirs for the Future on the Arab American Museum's website. We're joined by Andrew Demirjan as well as Dalia El Sayed on today's edition of the Megacast. And discussing this exhibit before today's interview with your PR team, something that kept coming up was this term Swana inspired. How did that, define that term for us, Dalia, and then B, how does that fit in to your idea of this future city?
Sure. So Swana stands for Southwest Asian North African, and it broadly covers a large geographic region where, of course, there are many differences, but also many commonalities. And so part of what we were looking at was the aesthetics, right? The sort of visual style, the patterns that get repeated, the materials and the forms that these visual expressions take. And we did site visits and museum trips throughout the region in preparing for this exhibition to sort of put together a visual database, and then of course transform those into what we think they would be in some undated future.
And then Andrew, as we continue to think about the Arab American community here in our local area and the impact that the rich history of Arabs across the world have had on American culture, and especially cultures here in southeastern Michigan. How did you employ, or how did the two of you employ the local communities that have such a strong Arab American history, that being, I think, Dearborn and Detroit and other parts of the suburban Detroit area, into this exhibit? And how did that help to also influence this design of the future city?
Well, there's one of the things that we did is we loved being in Dearborn and in Detroit, and we were taking photos of architecturally interesting buildings that kind of drew our attention, and we would take these photos and then start to create new forms of designs and patterns on these buildings. And then within our exhibition, we created a plaque that kind of was talking about, this is the architecture of Mustaqba'opolis. This is the kind of thing that they gravitate towards. And so you get to really study these patterns. So we're taking structures from right around the corner in Dearborn or just down the street on Michigan Avenue, and then kind of decking them out in these kind of really tricked out, interesting ways.
Yeah, we wanted people to be able to go in there and, of course, envision the future, but also connect with the moment of right now and see things that they're familiar with. So people visiting the exhibition will recognize some of the buildings and also have some kind of response to some of the objects, which are things that they might have in their house or that they might have brought with them from a different country.
There's another component to it as well. In addition to drawing from Detroit and Dearborn, you had asked about how are we kind of relating to the past. We're kind of drawing from not just the kind of golden age of the Islamic kind of era, but we're going into deep past and looking at things like Hammurabi's calendar from the kind of second millennium BC, and talking about how years aren't counted as kind of numerically increasing years, but instead they're cycles and they're named after what events happened there. So we took that kind of idea of naming cycles as calendar years. And so this is the kind of calendar that we use, but they were drawing from ancient Near Eastern, ancient Middle Eastern kind of events and histories.
So just a few more minutes we'll have with the both of you. So before we let you guys go, I want to start with you, Dahlia, and then we'll go to you, Andrew. When someone goes and sees this exhibit at the Arab American Museum, on their way out, what do you hope is the lasting impact that this exhibit has on them, or what do you hope that they pick up and learn from this experience?
I mean, I want people to have moments of experiencing joy and sensual and tactile pleasure, right? That's really, I think beauty is a really important and underrated aspect of our day-to-day life. I want people to feel inspired and that they've seen something beautiful, but also to have some pull away ideas that are deeper about shaping our potential future. And you can talk about that if you want. Yeah.
So I feel like so many of us now feel like our future has been foreclosed with the impact of climate change and democracy being kind of this unstable element. And we were interested in kind of trying to create what is this world that we want to be in, that's kind of not just solely existing to extract elements from the earth and destroy things as fast as possible. Let's try to imagine what the tactile feeling is, and even like the feeling of relaxing, where you don't have to have every moment of your day be this kind of progression towards productivity for your boss kind of thing.
Yeah, we've really just wanted people to have a moment to pause and think of an alternate future and alternate possibilities.
Right. And so hopefully this installation inspires people to think about what would they like to see in the future. What's the world that they want to be in, and start to imagine something outside of our present dilemma.
You can experience Mustaqba'opolis at the Arab American Museum. More information can be found at arabamericanmuseum.org. Dahlia, Andrew, thank you both so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much,
Tyler.
Thank you.
Appreciate having both of you on to tell us more about a look at our future city and a nice artistic observation of what might be coming in the future for us here across the world. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Megacast. Big thank you to all of our guests on today's edition of the program. Dr. Varun Vohra from the Michigan Poison and Drug Information Center, both Dan and Cindy Dunn from PaintJam, as well as both Dahlia El-Sayed and Andrew Demerjen from the Arab American Museum with their look into the Future City exhibit there at the local museum. You can still see it there right now. Souvenirs for the Future is the name of the exhibit itself. You can find all these interviews on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll also find links to all of our partnering TV, radio, and streaming outlets that join us live every day, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., as well as live to tape on Orion Neighborhood Television in northern Oakland County, as well as in the Birmingham Bloomfield area, live to tape on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Again, civiccentertv.com/megacast is the place to go for all of that information and links to those stations, as well as where to find us on demand. If you're just tuning in and, oh, darn, you missed our show, you can always find us on demand anytime on civiccentertv.com/megacast. Our new episodes and interviews usually uploaded sometime mid to late afternoon, the day of the show. Big thank you as well to our crew that makes this program possible each and every day. Today at Master Control, hitting the buttons and keeping us on the air at the office of My Michigan TV is Jared Clark, and a big thank you to him as well. Plenty of more programming coming up across our network. Stay tuned and find more information on all these different programs, and they're coming up on each one of our outlets on civiccentertv.com/megacast. That does it for today's edition of the program. We'll return very soon with a new episode.